Do you live with someone who consistently breaks boundaries? Someone who doesn't respect your boundaries? You tell them, hey, listen, I don't want somebody to know about this, and then they tell them anyway. If you do, then you will end up feeling suspicious about them, lacking trust. You won't want to tell them as much. You'll no longer keep them in on your inner loop of secrets about people or what's going on in your life. And soon those couples go on to share very little with emotional intimacy. And what ends up happening is they rely on the sexual intimacy to keep them together, and that doesn't work, because when you don't trust someone, your libido goes down as well for emotional and physical intimacy. So how do you know if your partner is just doing this flippantly with you, or if it's somebody who is really flawed in the ability to understand boundaries and keep them? Well, for one thing, they share personal information that you told them in confidence not to share, and this has to be consistent. They interrupt your work time with good reasons, or they give you what they say are good reasons, but to you, they're not. They're not well thought out, and they're not good reasons. No one's going to get hurt if they don't interrupt you. Number 3, they have friends over and they're being like loud while you're trying to sleep. And I see this a lot with couples living together, especially when they don't really respect each other's boundaries with sleep. They're insensitive, but that's also a boundary crossing. Yelling to you from another room and expecting you to answer them. That's a boundary issue. If they really want to talk to you, they can go into that room where you are and speak to you. Making jokes that you find insulting or offensive. Someone knows what your humor is, and if you've told them in the past, listen, I don't want to hear that because that's offensive to me, and they continually do it, then they're trying to perpetrate a boundary. They're disrespecting a boundary that you have about this. Or touching you in a way that you don't appreciate. That's a personal boundary, and hopefully you felt comfortable enough telling them you don't like to be touched in that way. If they continue to do that, that can border on a form of abuse. So what kind of people don't respect others' boundaries? Well, many times they're arrogant. Many times they're narcissistic. Many times they grew up in families that were all chaotic. They were totally enmeshed. Nobody had a space around them that said, this is my space and this is yours. If you grew up in a family like that, then you don't understand boundaries, and you have terrible boundaries for yourself as well. Many times people that don't have good boundaries have addictions. They may have a food addiction, a gambling addiction, a smoking addiction, a drinking addiction. They do this because they can't really, there's no boundary for what they will and won't expect or respect in themselves. So they basically are all over the place. And when you meet these people, if you fall in love with one, it's important for you to know up front, you're probably going to need therapy together if you want this to work, because they don't get it. They just don't understand it. And it ends up, they're not respecting your boundaries, and it's going to cause you to recoil, to no longer trust them with what's personal for you, and you won't want to be around them intimately, emotionally, or sexually. So what can you do? First of all, you need to clearly state the boundary. A lot of times people are hesitant to do that because they're afraid if their partner knows, they'll classify them as, what a bitch, or why are you always nagging about this? You're nagging about this because a boundary is important. It's protecting a value you have, and you should respect it, and you should demand they respect it too. Secondly, reinforce the boundary. The first time they perpetrate it, reinforce it and say, hey, listen, I told you before, I don't like that. I don't think it's funny. I don't find anything good about it. If you do it again, then I'm going to have to take more drastic measures. Tell them up front, if you betray my confidence again, I'm not going to tell you anything. And then be real with it, which leads me to the third, practice legal consequences. I mean, if someone tells something that you told them not to tell, something you told them in confidence, and they tell someone, then stop telling them. Just tell them up front, I'm not going to tell you because I don't trust you with this. They'll be angry, but maybe they'll be angry enough to make a change. Something has to motivate their change. If your partner and you begin like going in different spaces because you no longer can talk or trust each other, then you should see a therapist. And you should tell that therapist up front, listen, we do have an issue around boundaries. Like, I feel like my partner doesn't respect them and they don't understand them. Because usually if someone loves you, they will, if you say this is a boundary of mine, or this is a pet peeve, or this is a sensitivity, they will respect that because they don't want you upset. So if somebody's continually perpetrating it, it indicates something deeper is going on in the relationship, and it's important that the two of you talk about it so you can try and figure out a new plan if you want to salvage the relationship.